Hey guys. The disappearing Indian can represent many things, but first it's important to know how the soldiers have felt about the Indians and the soldiers' morals and how they felt about the war. European Romanticism is the reaction against modernity or progress. So the Indians wanted nothing to do with this. They didn't want anything to change. They just wanted, their land to stay their land and everything to stay the same. And the soldiers were not only struggling with the war, but the resistance of the Indians and the fact that the Indians wanted nothing to do with them. They didn't want them there. And, this started way before the Civil War, way back before the Revolutionary War and everything. The Indians mainly had two opinions. They could either resist the soldiers or help the soldiers and face the consequences with their tribes and families. So any Indians that went against their tribes or their families were looked down upon. Privatism, that is the morals of those who live close to nature. And aesthetic conventions, meaning the Indians didn't advocate abandoning their lifestyle of, their tribes and their families and living off the land. The soldiers often looked down upon the Indians simply because they were resisting what they were doing. And although the Indians, weren't seen as, a lot to the soldiers, they played a very important role in their lives. And the fact that the Indian keeps appearing and then disappearing means something significant to the lieutenant. In the beginning of the film, the Indian represents the socialization the lieutenant badly needs. He was left alone. He didn't want to leave his post. He didn't want to go against, his general. And by the end of the film, the Indian represents more, meaning the people that he needed to end up with. He, ended up finding his family and his wife and, everything that he needed in life with the Indians. His luck started, bad. He almost lost his foot in the war. And ironically, they were fighting, a war against, it was a civil war. So, he was fighting in the Civil War, but he was also fighting, excuse me, he was also fighting, a war with the Indians, not, an actual war, a figurative war with, race and having the same morals. And so ironically, he ended up with a white woman, but ironically, she was raised by the Indians, so she had all the morals and the ideals of all the Indians that he was fighting against. In the beginning of the film, the Indians were separated from the white people, mainly because of privatism. But oddly enough, a white soldier ends up with someone who grew up exactly like the Indians. The lieutenant adopts aesthetic conventions of the Indians, even though he left the conventions of the white man. So, if he went back to his general and everyone that he was fighting the war with, he would be looked down upon for abandoning them and, moving on and being with the Indians. But he adopted the new belief that, he was meant to be with this woman and, that he was meant to live the life that the Indians live. So, thank you.